At 2:34 a.m. on a Wednesday morning in Dubai's Marina district, a Filipina woman with bruises hidden under carefully applied concealer slipped 15,000 dirhams into her backpack and made a decision that would change her life forever. Her hands trembled as she retrieved her passport from the safe. Memorizing the code had taken her 3 weeks of watching her husband's fingers dance across the keypad. In 6 hours, Rami Khoury would return from his business trip to Abu Dhabi and discover his wife had vanished. But by then, Rosa Castillo would be 35,000 feet above the Persian Gulf, sitting next to a man who would teach her that not all dangerous men are created equal. This is the story of how a domestic worker escaped a golden cage and found an unlikely protector in the most feared man on Emirates flight EK-119. Welcome to Crime 5, where the darkest truths are revealed, and sometimes, against all odds, justice prevails. To our incredible viewers and loyal subscribers, thank you for standing by us. Your support means everything. Stay with us as we bring you stories that prove even in the darkest circumstances, hope can survive. And remember, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens when Rosa's past collides with Luca's future. Rosa Castillo was born in Tarlac Province, Philippines, to parents who worked the rice fields from sunrise to sunset for wages that barely kept them alive. She was the eldest of 5 children, which meant her childhood ended at 12 when her father suffered a stroke that left him unable to work. Her mother, Remedios Castillo, cleaned houses in the nearby city, coming home each night with hands cracked and bleeding from harsh chemicals. Her father, Eduardo Castillo, sat in their small house watching his family struggle, the guilt slowly killing him more efficiently than the stroke had. Rosa had dreams bigger than rice fields and cleaning buckets. She excelled in school, won academic awards, dreamed of becoming a nurse like the kind woman who had treated her father at the provincial hospital. But dreams require money, and money required sacrifice. At 17, Rosa made a decision that millions of Filipino families face every year. She would go abroad as an overseas Filipino worker, join the 2.3 million Filipinos working in the Middle East, become part of the invisible workforce that keeps Gulf nations running while sending home the remittances that keep Filipino families alive. Her plan was simple: work for 5 years, save aggressively, return home with enough money to put her siblings through school and buy her parents a proper house. 5 years of sacrifice for a lifetime of security. It seemed worth it. In 2017, Rosa arrived in Dubai with a domestic worker visa and stars in her eyes. The city was everything she'd imagined: towers of glass and steel reaching toward impossible heights, luxury cars that cost more than her entire village would earn in a decade, malls with air conditioning so powerful you forgot you were in the desert. But Rosa's Dubai was different from the tourist brochures. Her Dubai consisted of a 688-foot room in the servants' quarters of a sprawling villa in Emirates Hills, workdays that stretched from 5 a.m. to midnight, and a monthly salary of 1,200 dirhams, approximately $327 USD, from which her employment agency deducted fees that weren't quite legal but were completely normalized. She worked for the Al-Zirani family, one of Dubai's oldest and wealthiest dynasties built on 3 generations of real estate development. Sheikh Ibrahim Al-Zirani owned half of the Marina district, had investments spanning from London to Singapore, and commanded respect wherever he went. His wife, Sheikha Layla, was known for her charity work and her impeccable taste in everything from furniture to staff uniforms. Their 3 children attended international schools that cost more per semester than Rosa's entire family would earn in 5 years. Rosa cleaned their 5 bathrooms, prepared meals under the supervision of a Lebanese chef, organized closets that held more clothing than her entire village owned, and remained invisible except when her services were required. She sent 1,000 dirhams home every month, keeping 200 for herself, money she saved religiously, dreaming of the day she'd return home with enough to change her family's destiny. The work was exhausting, the isolation suffocating, but Rosa told herself it was temporary. 5 years. She could endure anything for 5 years. What she didn't expect was Rami Khoury. Rami Khoury was Sheikh Ibrahim's executive secretary, the man who managed the Sheikh's calendar, screened his calls, coordinated his international business dealings, and served as the intermediary between the Al-Zahrani Empire and the rest of the world. At 38, he was everything Rosa had been taught to admire, educated at American University of Beirut with an MBA, fluent in Arabic, English, and French, impeccably dressed in suits that probably cost more than Rosa earned in 6 months. He was Lebanese, from a middle-class family in Beirut, a self-made man who'd built his career through intelligence and relentless ambition in a city that measured worth by nationality and connections. Their first real conversation happened in March 2019, during the chaos of organizing Sheikha Layla's annual charity gala. The event planner had quit 2 weeks before the gala, the Lebanese chef had threatened to walk out over menu disagreements, and the household staff was working 18-hour days trying to transform the Al-Zahrani villa into a showcase worthy of Dubai's elite. Rosa had been assigned to assist with venue preparation, which meant she was working alongside Rami, who was coordinating vendors, managing the guest list of 300 influential people, and solving problems with an efficiency that impressed even Sheikh Ibrahim. "You're the one who reorganized the storage system," Rami said to her one afternoon, looking up from his tablet where he was managing the chaos. It wasn't a question. He'd clearly done his research. Rosa was surprised he'd noticed. Domestic workers were meant to be invisible, especially to men like Rami Khoury. "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered. "The old system was inefficient. I thought—" "You thought correctly," he interrupted, and for the first time, she looked up to find him actually seeing her, not looking through her like most employers did, but seeing her as a person with thoughts and capabilities. "You have excellent organizational skills. You should be doing more than cleaning bathrooms." The compliment felt like water in a desert. When was the last time anyone had acknowledged her intelligence, her worth beyond her ability to scrub tiles and fold laundry? Rami began finding reasons to interact with her. He'd ask her opinion on household logistics, compliment her efficiency, engage her in conversations that made her feel human again after 2 years of feeling like furniture. He was charming, attentive, and seemingly genuine in his interest in her thoughts and dreams. Rosa told herself not to read too much into it. Men like Rami Khoury didn't seriously pursue women like Rosa Castillo. But loneliness makes people believe things they shouldn't. The turning point came during Ramadan 2019. The Al-Zahrani family had traveled to their summer home in Switzerland, leaving a skeleton crew to maintain the Dubai villa. Rami had stayed behind to manage business operations, and Rosa was among the few staff members remaining in the empty mansion. One evening, after Rosa had finished her work and was eating a simple dinner alone in the kitchen, Rami appeared, unusual since he typically ate in his separate quarters or dined out. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, holding a plate of takeout from a Lebanese restaurant. "I'm tired of eating alone." That dinner lasted 3 hours. They talked about everything. Her family back home, his struggles building a career as a Lebanese expat in a city that favored Emiratis and Westerners, her dreams of becoming a nurse, his ambitions to start his own business someday. He told her about growing up as the son of a blacksmith in a Beirut suburb, how he'd worked 3 jobs while earning his degree, how he'd faced discrimination and overcome it through sheer determination. She told him about watching her father deteriorate, about the guilt of being so far from her family, about the loneliness of being invisible in a city full of millions. "You're not invisible to me," Rami said as the evening ended. "I see you, Rosa. I see how intelligent you are, how hard you work, how much you've sacrificed for your family. That takes strength most people don't have." Those words wrapped around Rosa's heart like a warm blanket. For the first time since arriving in Dubai, someone saw her as more than just a domestic worker. Someone acknowledged her humanity, her worth, her dreams. It felt like falling and flying at the same time. Over the next 6 months, their relationship deepened in the shadows of the Al-Zahrani mansion. Rami would find excuses to work late when he knew Rosa was finishing her evening duties. They'd meet in the garden after the family had gone to bed, talking for hours about their hopes and fears. He brought her books to read, taught her basic French, told her she was too intelligent to spend her life scrubbing floors. He made her feel special in a world that had spent 2 years making her feel worthless. By October 2019, Rami was talking about a future together, carefully, subtly, testing her reaction to the idea that they could be more than secret friends meeting in dark gardens. "I know this seems impossible," he told her one night, taking her hand for the first time. "A Lebanese secretary and a Filipina domestic worker. People would say I'm crazy. But I don't care what people think. I care about you, Rosa. I think we could build something real together." Rosa's practical side screamed warnings. This was too good to be true. Men like Rami didn't marry women like her. Workplace romances with massive power imbalances never ended well. But her lonely heart, starving for affection and recognition after years of isolation, drowned out those warnings. When Rami proposed in December 2019, no ring, just a simple question in the garden under a sky full of stars she couldn't see because of Dubai's light pollution, Rosa said yes. The wedding was small, almost secretive. Civil ceremony at a government office, no family invited, just 2 witnesses Rami had hired. He explained this was to avoid complications with his conservative relatives, to prevent problems with Rosa's employment visa status, to keep things simple until they were ready to go public. Red flags Rosa ignored because she wanted so desperately to believe this fairy tale was real. The marriage certificate was signed on January 15, 2020. Rosa Castillo became Rosa Curi. She thought her life was finally beginning. She had no idea it was actually ending. The transformation happened so gradually that Rosa almost didn't notice until the cage door had already locked. The first change came within a week of their marriage. Rami suggested, gently, lovingly, that she should quit her position with the Al-Zarani family. "My wife shouldn't be working as a domestic helper," he said, making it sound like he was elevating her status rather than removing her independence. "It's embarrassing for both of us. I earn enough to support us." Rosa hesitated. Her income, meager as it was, represented her connection to her family back home, her ability to send money, her economic autonomy. But Rami was persuasive. "Don't you trust me to take care of you? Don't you believe I want what's best for us?" Guilt and love made her agree. She resigned from the Al-Zarani household in February 2020, losing not just her income, but her visa sponsorship, her accommodation, her daily routine, and most importantly, her connections to the small community of Filipina domestic workers who had become her support system. Rami moved her into his apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in Barsha Heights, nothing like the mansion she'd worked in, but comfortable by her standards. He gave her an allowance of 100 dirhams per week for personal expenses. When she gently questioned why she couldn't access his account or have her own income, he smiled that charming smile that had first captivated her and explained, "This is how marriage works, Habibi. I provide, you manage our home. It's traditional. You'll get used to it." The second change was her passport. "For safekeeping," Rami said, placing it in his personal safe, along with their marriage certificate and other important documents. "These documents are too valuable to risk losing. You know how disorganized you can be." Rosa wasn't disorganized. She'd run household operations for one of Dubai's wealthiest families, but Rami said it so casually, so affectionately, that she accepted his logic. The safe's code was changed weekly. She never knew what it was. By March 2020, Rosa had no passport, no income, no job, no visa, except through her marriage, and no way to leave Dubai without Rami's permission and assistance. The golden cage had closed around her so smoothly she barely felt the bars until she tried to move. The isolation intensified. Rami discouraged her from maintaining friendships with other Filipino workers. "They'll be jealous that you married up," he explained. "They'll cause problems, spread gossip, try to poison your mind against me. Is that what you want?" He monitored her phone, checking her messages and call logs under the guise of making sure you're safe. He installed tracking software that allowed him to see her location at all times. When she discovered it and confronted him, he acted hurt. "I thought you'd appreciate that I care where you are. Dubai is dangerous for women alone. I'm protecting you." Rosa tried calling home to the Philippines, needing to hear her mother's voice, to feel connected to something real. But when the monthly overseas charges appeared on the phone bill, Rami erupted. "We can't afford international calls. Do you think money grows on trees? Your family survived before you were in Dubai. They can survive now. The verbal abuse escalated. Rami would criticize everything. Her cooking wasn't as good as his mother's. Her cleaning didn't meet his standards. Her appearance needed improvement. "You've let yourself go since the wedding," he'd say, looking at her with disgust. "When I married you, you made an effort. Now you look like any other maid." If you're seeing the warning signs Rosa missed, please hit that like button and subscribe. Understanding how abuse develops gradually helps us recognize it in our own lives or help others escape it. Next, we'll show you how Rosa discovered the truth that would shatter her world completely. The physical abuse started small, a grab that left finger-shaped bruises on her arm when she'd questioned his spending on a new watch, a shove that sent her stumbling into a wall when dinner wasn't ready on time, a slap across the face when she dared to suggest she might look for work. Each incident was followed by apologies, flowers, promises it would never happen again. Classic abuse cycle Rosa recognized intellectually, but couldn't escape practically. Where would she go? She had no money, no passport, no support system. Her family back home thought she'd married well, was living a dream life. How could she tell them the truth? The shame felt suffocating. But the breaking point came on March 10th, 2023, 3 months into their marriage that had felt like 3 years. Rami had left his phone on the bathroom counter while he showered, an unusual mistake for someone who guarded his devices obsessively. Rosa's instinct told her to look. What she found made her stomach turn to ice. WhatsApp messages between Rami and 3 of his Lebanese friends from Dubai dated throughout their entire relationship. November 2019. Karim. "You're really going to marry the maid?" Rami. "Why not? Could be entertaining. Plus, I'll win the bet." December 2019. Nabil. 2,000 dirhams says you don't go through with it. Rami. "Make it 5,000. I'll marry her and make her think it's real love." January 2020. George. "You actually married her? The maid?" Rami. "Told you I would. Pay up, Habibi. 5,000 dirhams. Also, it's hilarious how grateful she is, like I'm doing her some massive favor. These women are so desperate." February 2023. Kareem. "How's married life with the help?" Rami. "Training her properly. She needs to understand her place. Started as a maid, still a maid, just with a different title now. Give it another 6 months, I'll divorce her and send her back to her rice fields." Lesson learned about marrying above her station. There were dozens more messages, screenshots of her embarrassing attempts to learn French, photos he'd taken of her sleeping, sent to his friends with mocking captions, detailed descriptions of their intimate moments shared for entertainment. Every private moment of their relationship had been performance art for his friends' amusement. The bet, the humiliation, the complete fabrication of everything she'd believed was real love. Rosa sat on the bathroom floor, phone in shaking hands, listening to the shower run, and something inside her that had been bending under the weight of abuse finally snapped. She wasn't going to let him win. She wasn't going to be the broken woman he'd bet his friends he could destroy. She'd survived poverty, isolation, and years of invisibility. She'd survived because Filipino women like her mother had taught her that survival wasn't just about enduring. It was about fighting back when the moment came. Rosa memorized the safe combination through the bathroom mirror's reflection. She'd been watching him. Enter it for weeks, committing each number to memory. She photographed every degrading message, every mocking screenshot, every piece of evidence of his calculated cruelty. She'd been a domestic worker in one of Dubai's wealthiest households. She knew how to be invisible, how to plan, how to execute complex operations without anyone noticing. She had 72 hours until Rami's scheduled business trip to Abu Dhabi, 2 days attending meetings with potential investors for a business venture. He'd be gone from Tuesday morning until Thursday afternoon. During those hours, Rosa would disappear. She withdrew 15,000 dirhams from the emergency cash Rami kept hidden in his home office. Money she'd discovered while cleaning, money she'd counted carefully, money she knew he wouldn't notice missing immediately because he'd assume he'd spent it and forgotten. It was her own money anyway, she reasoned, remittances she'd earned that he'd prevented her from sending home. She researched flights obsessively using the tablet Rami had given her, but didn't monitor as carefully as her phone. Istanbul had the cheapest last-minute tickets. From there, she could figure out her next move. She packed one small backpack with essentials, a few clothes, copies of the message screenshots printed at a printing shop during her one supervised trip to the mall, the 15,000 dirhams divided into small stacks hidden throughout the bag. The morning of Tuesday, March 14, 2023, Rami left for Abu Dhabi at 6 a.m., kissing Rosa on the forehead and reminding her to have dinner ready for his return Thursday evening. "And try to make it edible this time," he added, that charming smile masking the insult. Rosa smiled back. She'd become excellent at performing. At 9:47 a.m., she retrieved her passport using the safe code she'd memorized. At 10:15 a.m., she bought an Emirates airline ticket to Istanbul, departing at 2:45 p.m., the first available flight that didn't require advance booking. At 11:30 a.m., she walked out of the Barsha Heights apartment for the last time, wearing sunglasses to hide the fading bruise on her cheekbone, carrying a backpack that held everything she had left in the world. At 1:50 p.m., Rosa Khoury cleared security at Dubai International Airport, her heart pounding so violently she was certain security officers could hear it. Every announcement made her flinch. Every security officer's glance made her certain Rami had discovered her escape, had alerted authorities, would have her detained. But her passport cleared. Her boarding pass printed, Gate C-15, Emirates flight EK199 to Istanbul. Departure 2:45 p.m. She had 2 hours before Rami would call to check on her during his lunch break. 2 hours before he'd discover she wasn't answering. By then, she'd be in the air, unreachable, free. Rosa boarded the plane in a daze, muscle memory guiding her down the aisle to seat 27A. Window seat, exactly as she'd requested, giving her a view of Dubai falling away beneath her. She'd watched this city from above once before, arriving with dreams and hope. Now she was watching it disappear with nothing but survival instinct and a desperate prayer that wherever she was going would be safer than where she'd been. She didn't notice the man taking seat 27B until she was already buckled in, eyes closed, trying to slow her racing heart. When she finally looked, she saw him. Tall, probably mid-40s, salt and pepper hair perfectly styled, expensive suit that screamed money and power, a face that would be handsome if it weren't so severe. He was speaking rapid Italian into his phone, voice low and controlled, discussing something that sounded important and potentially dangerous. Rosa's Italian was non-existent, but she recognized the tone. This was a man used to giving orders and having them followed without question. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, and glanced at her briefly. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. His were dark, assessing, the kind of eyes that cataloged everything and revealed nothing. Rosa looked away quickly, shrinking into her seat, pulling her backpack closer like a shield. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care. All she cared about was the plane leaving the gate, reaching the sky, putting distance between her and Rami Khoury. The flight attendants were making their safety announcements. The cabin crew was checking seatbelts. The engines were powering up. Rosa's phone, the one Rami had given her tracked and monitored, remained hidden in the apartment bathroom trash, her one small act of defiance. She'd bought a burner phone with cash, one untraceable number she'd memorized, and then destroyed the SIM card package. As the plane began taxiing toward the runway, that burner phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from Rami's phone, forwarded by her old phone before its tracking signal ended. "Where are you? Call me now." He'd discovered. 2 hours early. Somehow, he'd discovered. Rosa's blood turned to ice. Her hands gripped the armrests. The man in 27B noticed. She could feel his attention shift toward her, though he didn't turn his head. "First time flying?" he asked in English, accent clearly Italian, voice surprisingly gentle for someone whose phone conversation had sounded so dangerous. "No," Rosa managed, voice barely a whisper. "Just hoping we take off soon." The man's expression shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, but Rosa had learned to read micro-expressions during years of navigating employer moods. He'd recognized something in her voice: fear, desperation, the specific terror of someone running from something they couldn't outrun. "Emirates is very efficient," he said, returning his attention to his tablet. "We'll be in the air within 5 minutes. Then whatever you're running from will be 35,000 feet below you, at least temporarily." Rosa's head snapped toward him, shock overriding caution. How did he know? The man smiled slightly. Not unkindly. I've spent my life reading. People, Signora. You have the look of someone who needs distance between themselves and Dubai very, very badly. The plane's engines roared. The cabin crew took their seats. And as Emirates Flight EQ-19 lifted off the runway, leaving Dubai's impossible towers and Rosa's nightmare marriage behind, she realized the universe had just seated her next to someone who understood running, hiding, and survival. She just didn't know yet that Luca Romano understood these things because he was the exact kind of dangerous man women usually needed to escape from. Except Luca Romano was about to prove that not all dangerous men were the same. Hour 1 of Emirates Flight EK-19 passed in suffocating silence. Rosa kept her face turned toward the window, watching Dubai's geometric perfection shrink into desert patterns, then disappear entirely beneath clouds that looked solid enough to walk on. Her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white, fingernails cutting crescents into her palms. The pain was good. It kept her focused on something other than the terror coursing through her veins like ice water. The man in seat 27B, Luca, though she didn't know his name yet, had returned to his tablet after that unsettling comment about running from something. He seemed absorbed in whatever he was reading, occasionally making notes with a stylus, completely at ease in a way that Rosa envied. How did people exist without fear? How did they move through the world, certain that nothing was chasing them, that no angry husband was already mobilizing resources to drag them back to a cage disguised as a marriage? The flight attendants began beverage service. Rosa declined everything. Her stomach was too twisted to accept food or drink, but Luca ordered an espresso, black, and when the attendant moved on, he turned slightly toward Rosa. "You should eat something," he said quietly. "Fear burns energy faster than you realize, and wherever you're going, you'll need your strength." Rosa's defenses flared. "I don't need advice from strangers." The words came out harsher than she intended, but exhaustion had stripped away her politeness filter. Luca's expression didn't change. "Fair enough, but I'm not giving advice. I'm stating facts based on experience." There was something in his tone, not condescension, but recognition. Like he'd been where she was, running from something that wanted to destroy him. Before Rosa could respond, turbulence hit. The plane dropped suddenly, stomach-lurching chaos that sent the seatbelt sign illuminating with an urgent ding. Rosa gasped, grabbing for her backpack that had shifted during the jolt, and in her panic, she pulled too hard. The zipper, already straining from hasty packing, gave way. Contents exploded across her lap into the aisle under the seat in front of her. Her few clothes, the 15,000 dirhams in carefully counted stacks. Her passport, with Rosa Kari, stamped on pages that felt like evidence of her stupidity. And worst of all, the printed screenshots of Rami's WhatsApp messages, complete with his mocking commentary about training his maid wife, complete with the photos he'd shared for his friends' entertainment. Everything that proved her nightmare was real, scattered across row 27 for anyone to see. Luca moved with surprising speed for someone his size. He was already retrieving items from the aisle before Rosa could process what was happening, his movements efficient and discreet, blocking other passengers' views with his body. He handed her the clothes without comment, carefully stacked the money without counting it, retrieved her passport and the screenshots last. But Rosa saw the exact moment his eyes caught the WhatsApp messages, saw his expression shift from neutral helpfulness to something darker, more dangerous. He read one page, then another. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a muscle jumping beneath his skin. When he finally looked at Rosa, his eyes held an emotion she couldn't quite identify. Rage, maybe, but controlled, focused rage that made the plane's turbulence seem gentle by comparison. "This man," Luca said, his voice so quiet only Rosa could hear, tapping the screenshots with one finger. "This is who you're running from?" Rosa wanted to lie, to deflect, to maintain some shred of dignity. But what was the point? This stranger had seen everything. Her poverty, her shame, her husband's calculated cruelty documented in digital permanence. "Yes," she whispered, "Rami Khoury, my husband. Except our marriage was a bet. I was his entertainment. 3 months of proving to his friends that he could marry the lowest status woman he could find and break her completely." Luca's expression remained carefully neutral, but Rosa noticed his hand had formed a fist around his stylus. Where does this Rami work? The question seemed odd, too specific. Rosa answered anyway. What did it matter now? He's executive secretary to Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zarani, real estate empire, one of Dubai's wealthiest families. Something flickered across Luca's face. Recognition, maybe satisfaction. Al-Zarani, he repeated, and now his smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Interessante. Before Rosa could ask what that meant, Luca pulled out his phone. Expensive, she noticed, some model she didn't recognize, and made a call. He spoke in rapid Italian, his voice low and controlled, but Rosa caught certain words that sounded similar enough to Spanish for her to guess their meaning. Indagare, investigate, al-Zarani, curi, ora, now. When he ended the call, he turned back to Rosa with an expression that made her simultaneously relieved and terrified. Rosa Curi, he said, reading her passport before handing it back. I'm going to tell you something that might frighten you, but I need you to listen carefully and trust that I'm being honest. Rosa's heart hammered. Who are you? My name is Luca Romano. I control shipping operations, from the Mediterranean to the Gulf. I also handle, let's call them sensitive business arrangements, that governments and corporations would prefer to deny exist. He paused, letting that information sink in. What I'm saying, as clearly as I can without alarming other passengers, is that I'm what people call a mafia boss. I'm dangerous, I've hurt people who deserved it, and I'm probably going to hell if such a place exists. Rosa should have been terrified, should have called the flight attendant, demanded a seat change, screamed for help. Instead, she heard herself ask, why are you telling me this? Because your husband works for people who tried to steal 50 million euros from my organization 2 months ago. A shipping deal involving ports in Dubai and Naples. Your al-Zarani family and their associates thought they could manipulate contracts, forge documents, and walk away with money that wasn't theirs. Luca's smile held no warmth. They were wrong. I was in Dubai collecting what they owed me. Your husband, Rami Khoury, was in several of those meetings. He knows exactly who I am. The implications crashed over Rosa like a wave. That means when he discovers you're on this flight, and he will discover it because men like him have resources and connections, he'll also discover you're sitting next to someone he fears more than any government authority. Luca leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely audible. Here's what I'm offering, Rosa. Protection. Resources. A way to disappear so completely that Rami will never find you. And in exchange, you tell me everything you heard and saw while working in the al-Zarani household. Every conversation, every business meeting, every piece of information that might help me finish what I started. Rosa's mind spun. You want to use me, just like he did. No, Luca's response was immediate and firm. Rami used you for entertainment and ego. I'm offering you a transaction, information for protection. You can refuse. You can walk off this plane in Istanbul and figure out your next move alone. But I'm guessing you have maybe 15,000 dirhams, no plan beyond get away from Dubai, and a husband who's already tracking you through every database and connection he has access to. If this conversation has you on the edge of your seat wondering whether Rosa should trust a mafia boss, hit that subscribe button because what happens next will shock you. Sometimes the most dangerous option is actually the safest one. Rosa stared at this man who claimed to be everything she should fear and realized he was offering something Rami never had: honesty. Brutal, uncomfortable honesty without pretty lies or romantic manipulation. What kind of information? She asked carefully. Meetings, business partners, shell companies, money transfers you might have overheard being discussed. You were invisible in that household, Rosa. Maids always are. But invisible people see and hear everything. Luca pulled out a leather notebook, expensive looking, and a pen. You spent 2 years working for the al-Zaranis before Rami isolated you. I'm betting your memory is better than you realize. He was right. Rosa had excellent memory. It's what had made her valuable to the household, what had impressed Rami enough to notice her initially. She remembered conversations in Arabic she hadn't fully understood but had absorbed anyway. Remembered names, dates, the anxiety in Sheikh Ibrahim's voice when certain business deals were discussed. If I help you, Rosa said slowly, What exactly does your protection look like? It looks like this. When we land in Istanbul, you don't go to the connecting flight counter. You come with me. My people will have passports, documents, everything you need to travel under a different identity. We go to Sicily, my home territory where I control everything from government officials to hotel registries. You stay at my family's property where no one can touch you without going through me first. And while you're there, you tell me everything you know about the Al-Zarani operations. And then? Rosa's voice was steady despite her fear. Then you're free. I'll provide you with enough money to start over anywhere you want. New identity if you need it. Connections to help your family in the Philippines without Rami ever knowing. You'll be able to disappear completely. Live whatever life you choose. Luca's expression softened slightly. I don't keep people in cages, Rosa. I'm offering you a way out of one. The plane's seatbelt sign dinged off. Flight attendants resumed service. Normal sounds of normal people living normal lives surrounded them, while Rosa Castillo faced the most important decision of her existence: trust a confessed criminal who promised freedom, or face her abusive husband's hunt alone with nothing but hope and 15,000 dirhams. Her phone, the burner, vibrated again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Rosa, this is Sheikh Ibrahim's security. Your husband reported you missing. We are working with Dubai authorities to locate you. Your flight has been identified. There will be police waiting in Istanbul to ensure your safe return to your concerned husband. Do not attempt to run. Rosa's blood turned to ice. Rami had done it. He'd mobilized the Al-Zarani family security resources, probably claiming she was mentally unstable, that she'd stolen money. Whatever lies would make authorities cooperative. She showed Luca the message without a word. He read it, and his smile returned, that dangerous, controlled smile that suggested violence was always an option waiting to be deployed. Perfect, he said, which was absolutely not the word Rosa expected. This gives us exactly what we need. How is this perfect? Rosa's voice cracked. They're going to arrest me the moment we land. No, Luca said calmly, already typing on his own phone. They're going to try. But Istanbul is a city where money speaks, louder than marriage certificates, and I have significantly more money than your husband or his employers. He showed her his screen, a message in Italian to someone named Marco, with instructions that included amounts like 50,000 for immediate cooperation and have documentation ready. By the time we land, Luca explained, there will be no police waiting for Rosa Kuri. There will be confusion about which flight, which passenger, which gate. These things happen in busy airports. And while they're sorting out the confusion, you'll be leaving with me under a different name entirely. He paused, studying her face. But I need your answer now, Rosa. Come with me. Help me finish what the Al-Zarani started, and I promise you'll be free. Or walk off this plane alone and hope you're smarter than the people hunting you. The plane intercom crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Istanbul. Please return to your seats and prepare for landing. Rosa looked at the message on her phone, looked at the screenshots of Rami's mockery, looked at this dangerous man who was offering her the one thing she needed most, a chance. If you're lying to me, she said quietly, if this is just another man trying to use me, I swear I'll find a way to make you regret it. Luca's smile turned genuine for the first time since they'd met. Rosa, if I betray you, you have my permission to kill me yourself. I'll even provide the weapon. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Rosa Castillo, who had spent her entire life being used and discarded by people with more power than her, took the hand of a mafia boss and shook it firmly. We have an agreement. As the plane descended toward Istanbul and Rosa's past rushed to meet her future, she realized she just made the most dangerous bet of her life. The only question was whether this time she'd finally win. Istanbul Ataturk Airport was chaos incarnate, 3:47 p.m. local time, peak arrival hours when half of Europe and the Middle East seemed to be moving through the same terminals simultaneously. Rosa followed Luca through the crowds with her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape her chest cavity. He moved with absolute confidence, a man who knew exactly where he was going and expected the world to move aside for him. People did. Something about his presence, his posture, the way he carried himself, made crowds part without him asking. Stay close, he said quietly, his hand resting lightly on her lower back, guiding, not controlling. Rosa noticed the difference immediately. Rami's touches had always been possessive, gripping, leaving bruises. Luca's touch was barely there, protective without being proprietary. They bypassed passport control entirely. Luca led her through a door marked personnel that should have been locked but opened at his approach. Inside, a man in an expensive suit waited. Turkish, maybe early 50s, with the professional demeanor of someone who'd spent his career making problems disappear for wealthy clients. "Luca Romano," the man said, shaking Luca's hand with genuine warmth. "Always a pleasure. And this must be Signora Martinelli?" He turned to Rosa with a smile, holding out a passport, Italian, dark blue, with her photo but a different name. Elena Martinelli, born Milano, 1992. Rosa stared at her own face under someone else's identity. "How did you—" "I made a few calls during the flight," Luca said simply. "Mehmet here specializes in creative documentation. The passport is legitimate, entered into Italian databases this morning, complete with travel history. As far as anyone checking knows, Elena Martinelli is an Italian citizen who's been living in Dubai for work and is now returning home." Mehmet handed her a complete identity packet, Italian driver's license, credit cards with her new name, even a work visa stamp from UAE showing she'd been employed as a translator. The level of detail was terrifying in its perfection. "The Dubai authorities are looking for Rosa Curi, Filipina national," Mehmet explained. "They have no interest in Elena Martinelli, Italian citizen. You'll clear customs and be gone before they realize there's been any confusion." He paused, his expression softening. "Luca explained your situation. I have 3 daughters, what your husband did. Bastardo. You're safe now." But Rosa didn't feel safe. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like any moment someone would grab her arm and drag her back to Rami's apartment. "The police message," she said to Luca. "They said they'd be waiting." "They're waiting at the wrong terminal," Luca interrupted gently. "Looking for a Filipina woman traveling alone on a Philippine passport. We landed at the cargo terminal where my business has certain arrangements with airport security. By the time they realized their information was incomplete, we'll be gone." The efficiency of it all was stunning. Within 15 minutes, Rosa, now Elena, was in the back of a Mercedes S-Class with diplomatic plates, pulling away from the airport through access roads that bypassed public traffic entirely. Luca sat beside her, still working his phone, coordinating with people whose names Rosa didn't know and probably shouldn't. "Where are we going?" she asked, watching Istanbul's sprawling chaos blur past the tinted windows. "Private airfield in Yeşilköy," Luca replied. "My plane is waiting to take us to Palermo, but first, we need to make a stop." The Mercedes pulled into what looked like an upscale office building in Istanbul's business district. Modern, anonymous, the kind of place where serious money changed hands behind closed doors. Luca led Rosa to the 8th floor, into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Bosphorus. Waiting inside were 3 men who radiated the same dangerous competence as Luca, expensive suits barely concealing the violence they were capable of delivering. "Rosa," Luca said, gesturing to the men, "these are my associates. They're here to take your statement about everything you remember from the Alzarani household. Every detail matters: names, dates, conversations, documents you saw, business partners who visited, anything that seemed unusual or concerning." For the next 2 hours, Rosa talked. She described meetings she'd served tea during, conversations in Arabic she'd overheard while cleaning, documents she'd glimpsed in trash bins while emptying offices. Names tumbled from her memory: shell companies in the Cayman Islands, business partners from Russia and China, wire transfer amounts that made the men taking notes exchange significant glances. She told them about the October 2019 meeting where Sheikh Ibrahim had screamed at someone on speakerphone about missing shipment and Naples Port Authority, about the December visit from Italian men whose suits couldn't quite hide their weapons, about Rami's involvement in creating false documentation for property transfers. Luca listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker as Rosa's testimony revealed the extent of the Alzarani family's operations. When she finally finished, exhausted and hoarse, he nodded slowly. "You just gave us enough evidence to dismantle their entire network," he said, "including your husband's role in the fraud. Everything you heard, everything you saw, it corroborates what we suspected, but couldn't prove. One of the associates, Marco, the one Luca had messaged during the flight, spoke up. Boss, the Filipino woman's husband is already moving. His name's all over Dubai law enforcement channels. He's claiming she's mentally unstable, stole money, needs to be returned for her own safety. The Al-Zarani family is backing his story. Of course they are, Lucas said grimly. Can't have their secretary's wife running around with potential information about their business operations. How much pressure are they applying? Significant. They've contacted Interpol, UAE Embassy in Turkey, even hired a private security firm to track her. This isn't just about a husband wanting his wife back. They're treating her like a security threat. Marco glanced at Rosa. They're serious about finding you. Rosa felt her chest tighten. They'll never stop looking. Yes, they will, Lucas said with absolute certainty, because in approximately 48 hours, the Al-Zarani family is going to have much bigger problems than one escaped domestic worker. Legal problems, financial problems, the kind that make governments freeze assets and issue arrest warrants. He turned to Rosa, his expression softer than she'd yet seen it. I told you I'd protect you. That protection includes making sure the people hunting you are too busy defending themselves to care about where you've gone. By next week, your husband will be answering questions about fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy charges. He won't have time to look for you. The weight that had been crushing Rosa's chest for 3 months began to lift just slightly. You can really do that? I can do that, Luca confirmed, but right now we need to move. The longer we stay in one location, the higher the risk. My plane leaves in 90 minutes. If you're amazed at how Luca's network is protecting Rosa, imagine what happens next when Rami discovers who she's with. Hit that like button and subscribe because Act 5 brings the confrontation you've been waiting for. The private airfield was exactly what Rosa expected from a Mafia Boss's operation. Small, exclusive, with minimal security presence because the people using it preferred anonymity over oversight. Luca's plane was a Gulfstream G650, white with subtle blue striping, the kind of aircraft that cost more than Rosa's entire village would generate in a century. Inside was even more impressive. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, a galley that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. A flight attendant greeted them with practiced professionalism that didn't quite mask her curiosity about Rosa. Benvenuta, Signora Martinelli, she said in Italian-accented English. Please make yourself comfortable. We'll be departing shortly. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Rosa finally allowed herself to believe she might actually escape. Istanbul was falling away beneath her. Dubai was hours behind. Rami's reach, no matter how extensive, couldn't extend into the sky itself. You should rest, Lucas said, settling into the seat across from her. It's a 3-hour flight to Palermo. When we arrive, you'll meet my family. They'll have questions. What kind of questions? Rosa asked warily. Lucas' slight smile held understanding. My mother is the real power in our family, Antonella Romano. She'll want to know why I'm bringing home a woman I met on a plane, why I'm offering you protection, what our arrangement entails. She's protective, suspicious, and absolutely ruthless when it comes to family security. Will she hate me? The words came out smaller than Rosa intended. She'll be cautious, Lucas said honestly. But my mother respects strength. You escaped an abusive marriage with nothing but intelligence and courage. You're providing information that will protect our family's interests. She'll recognize your worth, even if she doesn't initially like the situation. He paused. And for what it's worth, I've never brought a woman home to meet her before. So prepare for intense scrutiny. That revelation hung in the air between them. Rosa studied this man who'd hijacked her escape and turned it into something else entirely. Protection, purpose, possibility. Why are you really doing this? She asked quietly. The truth, not the business reasons about the Al-Zaranis. Why protect someone like me? Luca was silent for a long moment, looking out the window at clouds that stretched to infinity. When he finally spoke, his voice carried weight of old wounds. When I was 25, my sister Isabella married a man who seemed perfect, educated, wealthy, charming. My family celebrated because he elevated her status. Within a year, he was beating her so badly she could barely leave the house. Rosa's breath caught. What happened? She tried to leave. He killed her rather than let her go. Luca's expression was carved from stone. Made it look like an accident, car crash into the Mediterranean. The police believed him. My family believed him. Only I saw the truth, and by the time I gathered proof, it was too late. He turned back to Rosa, and his eyes held ghosts. So when I see a woman running from a man who treats her like property, who married her as entertainment, who thinks his ego matters more than her humanity, I remember Isabella. And I make different choices than I did 20 years ago. The confession shattered something in Rosa's chest. Here was a man everyone feared, a criminal who'd built an empire on violence and intimidation, and he was protecting her because he'd failed to protect his sister. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Luca said firmly. "Be angry, be determined, be the woman who survives and thrives despite everything Rami tried to destroy. That's how you honor people like Isabella, by refusing to let bastards like your husband win." The plane climbed through clouds, carrying Rosa Castillo, no, Elena Martinelli now, toward a new identity and an uncertain future. In the seat across from her sat a mafia boss who'd become her protector, for reasons both practical and painfully personal. Below them, in Dubai's gleaming towers and Istanbul's chaotic sprawl, Rami Khoury was discovering that his maid wife had boarded a plane with the one man he feared more than death itself. The hunt was on. But this time, the prey had teeth. And so did her protector. The Romano family compound sat on 30 acres of Sicilian hillside overlooking the Mediterranean, protected by walls that had stood for 3 centuries and security systems installed last month. Rosa arrived at 9:23 p.m. local time, exhausted beyond anything she'd ever experienced, to find the entire Romano family assembled in the villa's main courtyard, like she was visiting royalty rather than a runaway domestic worker traveling on forged documents. Antonella Romano was exactly what Rosa expected, and nothing like she'd imagined. 71 years old, barely 5 feet tall, dressed in elegant black with pearls that probably cost more than the Al-Zarani villa, she radiated authority that made Sheikh Ibrahim look like an amateur. Her eyes, the same dark brown as Luca's, cataloged everything about Rosa in approximately 3 seconds. The cheap clothes, the nervous posture, the bruise on her wrist that makeup couldn't quite conceal, the way she instinctively positioned herself slightly behind Luca like he was a shield. "Mama," Luca said, kissing both her cheeks with genuine affection. "This is Rosa Castillo, the woman I told you about." Antonella's gaze never left Rosa's face. When she finally spoke, her English was heavily accented but perfectly clear. "The Filipina who worked for the Al-Zaranis, the one who married the Lebanese secretary who bet his friends he could break her." She stepped closer, invading Rosa's personal space with the confidence of someone who'd spent 70 years getting exactly what she wanted. "Show me your hands." Rosa extended her hands, confused. Antonella took them, turning them over to examine palms and fingers with surprising gentleness. "Calluses," she announced to the assembled family, "from years of work, cleaning, scrubbing, carrying. These are honest hands." She looked up at Rosa, and something in her expression softened microscopically. "My grandmother came from nothing. Sicilian peasant who married into this family when my grandfather needed sons, and his first wife couldn't provide them. Everyone said she wasn't good enough, wasn't educated enough, wasn't worthy of the Romano name." Antonella released Rosa's hands. "My grandmother built this family into what it is today. She taught me that worth isn't about where you start. It's about what you survive and how you fight back." The tension Rosa had been carrying since Istanbul eased slightly. "Thank you, Signora Romano." "Don't thank me yet," Antonella said sharply. "You're here because my son believes you can help us destroy people who tried to steal from our family. You're here because Luca sees something in you that he hasn't seen in any other woman in 20 years. But you're also here because you're running, and people who run bring their problems with them." She gestured to the villa's entrance. "Come, you'll eat, rest, and tomorrow we'll discuss what happens next." The Romano compound was organized like a small kingdom. Main villa for Antonella and key family members. 3 separate houses for Luca, his brother Antonio, and his sister Sofia. Guard quarters, staff accommodations, gardens maintained by people who'd worked for the family for generations. Rosa was given a guest suite in the main villa, 2 rooms with antique furniture, marble bathroom, windows overlooking the sea. It was more luxury than she'd ever experienced, and somehow lonelier than her 6-and-8 room in the Al-Zarani servants' quarters. That first night, Rosa couldn't sleep. Jet lag, adrenaline crash, the surreal nature of her situation, everything conspired to keep her staring at the ceiling until 2:47 a.m., when a soft knock interrupted her insomnia. Luca stood in the hallway, still dressed despite the hour, holding 2 glasses of wine. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. They ended up on the villa's terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, talking until sunrise painted the sky in shades Rosa had forgotten existed after years of Dubai's urban glow. Luca told her about growing up Romano, the expectations, the violence normalized as business, the slow realization that his family's empire was built on fear and blood. Rosa told him about Tarlac province, about her father's stroke, about the guilt of leaving her family to work in a foreign country that treated her like she was less than human. "Do you regret it?" Luca asked as dawn broke. "Going to Dubai?" Rosa considered the question carefully. "I regret Rami. I regret believing his lies. But I don't regret leaving home, because staying would have meant watching my family slowly starve. Sometimes there are no good choices, only different kinds of sacrifice." "That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in years," Luca said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun rose, and Rosa realized something surprising. She felt safe. Actually safe, for the first time since her wedding day. The next morning, reality crashed back. Marco burst into breakfast with news that made Antonella's expression turn glacial and Luca's turn murderous. "Rami Kuri knows," Marco announced, setting his laptop on the table to show security footage from Istanbul airport. The video showed Rami himself. He'd flown to Turkey within hours of discovering Rosa's escape, screaming at airport officials, showing them photos of Rosa, demanding to know her flight details. But the next clip made Rosa's blood freeze. It showed Rami with 3 men in expensive suits, clearly private security, reviewing passenger manifests and airport camera footage. The timestamp read 8:23 p.m. yesterday, while Rosa was meeting Antonella. "He's identified the Emirates flight," Marco continued. "He's reviewed security footage showing Rosa boarding. He's seen her sitting in 27A. Marco paused, his expression grim. "And he's seen the man in 27B. Boss, he knows she was with you." The kitchen erupted in rapid Italian. Antonella, Luca, Antonio, and Sofia, all talking over each other with the passionate intensity that Rosa was learning was normal Romano family communication. When they finally switched back to English for Rosa's benefit, Antonella was smiling like a shark scenting blood. "This is good," she announced, which seemed insane until she explained. "This Lebanese nobody now knows his wife is under Luca Romano's protection. He can't touch her without declaring war on this family, and the Al-Zaranis, for all their billions, aren't stupid enough to start a war they can't win." "Mama's right," Luca agreed, "but Rami won't give up. Men like him can't accept that women have agency, that they can choose to leave. His ego won't allow it." He turned to Rosa. "He'll try to make contact, threaten you, manipulate you, promise he's changed. You need to be prepared. If you're worried about what happens when an abusive husband discovers his wife is protected by the mafia, you should be. Hit that subscribe button because the confrontation coming in Act 6 will be unlike anything you expect." Rosa spent the next 3 days in a strange limbo, protected but isolated, safe but not free, surrounded by people who were simultaneously terrifying and oddly welcoming. Sofia, Luca's sister, taught her basic Italian phrases and showed her how to shoot a 9mm handgun at the compound's private range. "Every woman should know how to protect herself," Sofia said firmly. "Luca can't be everywhere always." Antonio, the younger brother who managed the family's legitimate businesses, explained how they were using Rosa's testimony to dismantle the Al-Zarani empire legally. "We've filed complaints with UAE authorities, Interpol, Italian financial regulators," he told her, showing her documents with official seals in multiple languages. "Your information about shell companies and money transfers gave us everything we needed. Within 2 weeks, the Al-Zaranis will be too busy defending themselves to worry about one escaped domestic worker." But it was Antonella who surprised Rosa most. The matriarch spent hours with her, ostensibly teaching her Sicilian recipes, but actually conducting the most thorough interview Rosa had ever experienced. Questions about her family, her dreams, her plans for the future, her feelings about Luca. "My son looks at you the way his father looked at me," Antonella said one afternoon while they were making pasta by hand. "Like you're the answer to questions he didn't know he was asking." Rosa's hands stilled in the dough. I don't want him to think I'm using him, that I'm trading one cage for another." "Are you?" Antonella's question was sharp. "Trading cages?" "No," Rosa said firmly. "I'm grateful for his protection. I respect his honesty. I'm even beginning to trust him, which terrifies me because the last man I trusted destroyed me. But I'm not staying because I need him. I'm staying because I want to finish what we started, destroying the people who thought they could treat human beings like property." Antonella studied her for a long moment, then smiled, genuine warmth that transformed her severe features. "Good. You have spine. My son needs a woman with spine, not another delicate flower who'll break the first time life gets difficult." On the fourth day, Rami made his move. Not physically. He was still in Dubai, probably being questioned by authorities about the fraud allegations that Antonio had triggered, but through the one weapon he'd always wielded effectively: manipulation. The message came through the burner phone Rosa had kept, the number only Rami knew. She was in the villa's library when it arrived, and Luca was close enough to see her face drain of color. The message was pure Rami. "Rosa, please, I know I hurt you. I know I made terrible mistakes. But I love you. I married you because I loved you, not because of any bet. Those messages were just talk. You know how men joke with their friends. Come home. I'll get counseling. We'll fix this together. Your family needs the money I've been sending them. Don't let pride destroy both our futures. I forgive you for running. Just come home." Below the message was a photo of Rosa's mother, Remedios, looking exhausted and worried, with a caption, "Your mother is sick. She needs medicine. Come home." Rosa handed the phone to Luca without a word, her hands shaking with rage rather than fear. He read the message, and his expression turned to stone. "He's lying about all of it," Rosa said, her voice steady despite the fury coursing through her veins. "He never sent money to my family. He controlled all my finances, prevented me from sending remittances. He's using my mother's actual health problems as leverage. And that bit about forgiving me," she laughed bitterly, "he's already planning how he'll punish me when I return." "You're not returning," Luca said flatly. "Ever. But we need to deal with your family situation." Within 2 hours, Luca had people on the ground in Tarlac province, not threatening, just checking on Rosa's family and discreetly providing the medical care her mother needed. By evening, Rosa was on a video call with her mother, who was in a clean hospital room receiving treatment funded by Rosa's new employer in Italy. Remedios cried with relief, blessed Rosa repeatedly, and didn't ask too many questions about the nice Italian man visible in the background of the call. "Thank you," Rosa told Luca after the call ended. "For my mother, for everything." "Don't thank me," Luca said. "This is what family does." "And Rosa?" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You're beginning to feel like family." That night, as Rosa lay in bed processing everything that had happened in the 4 days since boarding a plane in Dubai, she realized something terrifying and wonderful. She was falling for Luca Romano. Not because he'd saved her, not because she needed him, but because he'd given her the one thing Rami never had, the freedom to choose. The confrontation came 3 weeks after Rosa arrived in Sicily, and it happened in the most public way possible, through international media that made Rami Khoury wish he'd never heard the name Rosa Castillo. Antonio Romano had been busy during those 3 weeks, working with investigative journalists, financial regulators, and prosecutors across multiple countries. On April 7, 2023, major newspapers in Italy, the UAE, and the Philippines published simultaneous exposés detailing the Al-Zarani family's money laundering operations, shell companies, and fraudulent business practices. Rosa's name never appeared. Antonio had protected her identity completely, but the evidence she'd provided formed the backbone of every article. The stories included interviews with 12 other Filipina domestic workers who'd suffered abuse in UAE households, testimonies about the kafala system that trapped migrant workers in exploitative situations, and detailed documentation of how wealthy Gulf families use their influence to silence complaints and avoid accountability. The Al-Zahrani empire didn't just crack, it shattered. Sheikh Ibrahim was arrested at Dubai International Airport attempting to board a flight to London. 3 of his business partners fled to countries without extradition treaties. Bank accounts across 4 continents were frozen pending investigation. And the UAE government, embarrassed by international attention on domestic worker abuse, launched reforms that would benefit thousands of vulnerable workers. Rami Khoury, executive secretary to a suddenly disgraced billionaire, found himself unemployed, under investigation for fraud and document falsification, and facing deportation from Dubai as his work visa sponsorship evaporated. But his response to losing everything revealed exactly who he'd always been underneath the charm. The messages to Rosa escalated from manipulation to threats. "You destroyed my life. You'll pay for this. I'll find you wherever you're hiding. You think you're safe? No one is safe from me. I'm coming for you, and when I find you, you'll regret everything." Rosa showed each message to Luca without fear, and each one made his protective instincts sharpen. "He's desperate," Luca observed. "Men like him can't accept that they've lost control. He'll try something stupid." He was right. On April 15, 2023, Rami Khoury made the catastrophically stupid decision to come to Sicily. Security cameras at Palermo Airport captured his arrival. Cheap clothes replacing his usual expensive suits, unshaven and wild-eyed, traveling under his own passport because he couldn't afford the forgery that had gotten Rosa out of Dubai. He'd depleted his savings hiring a private investigator to locate Rosa, and that investigator had discovered she was in Sicily, though the specific location remained unknown. What Rami didn't understand was that Sicily wasn't Dubai. Here, the Romano name carried weight that Sheikh Al-Zahrani's billions couldn't buy. Luca's people identified Rami within 20 minutes of his arrival. By the time he'd cleared customs, Rosa already knew he was on the island. "Let him come," Rosa said when Luca offered to have Rami detained at the airport and deported immediately. "I need to face him. I need him to see that I'm not afraid anymore, that he has no power over me, but on my terms, in a place I choose, with people I trust watching." Antonella approved the plan immediately. "The girl has steel," she told Luca proudly. "She's not running anymore. She's standing her ground. This is how Romano women handle threats." The meeting was arranged at a cafe in Palermo's historic district, public enough to prevent violence, private enough for honest conversation, with Marco and 2 other Romano associates at nearby tables, ensuring Rosa's safety. Rosa sat at an outdoor table at 2 p.m. on April 16th, wearing clothes Sophia had given her, expensive, elegant, nothing like the domestic worker uniforms or cheap clothes she'd owned in Dubai. Her hair was styled, her bruises had faded, and she wore confidence like armor. Rami appeared at 2:17 p.m., and Rosa barely recognized him. The polished executive secretary had been replaced by a desperate man who'd lost everything: his job, his reputation, his control over the wife he'd married as entertainment. He sat down across from her without invitation, his eyes scanning her appearance with visible shock. "Rosa," he began, but she cut him off immediately. "Elena, my name is Elena Martinelli now. Rosa Khoury died the day she discovered her marriage was a bet. I'm someone else entirely." If this confrontation has you on the edge of your seat, drop a comment telling us what you'd say to an abusive ex if you had this moment. And subscribe, because what happens next proves Rosa's transformation is complete. Rami's face flushed with anger. "You think you can just become someone else? Change your name and pretend our marriage doesn't exist? I can report you for identity fraud, for theft, for what?" Rosa interrupted calmly. "For escaping abuse? For refusing to remain property? The money I took was my own earnings that you stole. The identity I'm using has every legal protection the Italian government can provide. And the information I gave investigators about the Al-Zahrani family's operations?" She smiled without warmth. "That was justice for everyone you and your employers hurt. Rami leaned forward, voice dropping to the threatening tone she remembered from their worst fights. "You're making a mistake, Rosa. Come back to Dubai with me. We'll fix this. I'll forgive you for everything. The running, the betrayal, destroying my career. Just come back." No. The word was simple, final, delivered without hesitation. "I will never go back to you. I will never let you touch me again. I will never believe another word you say. You married me as a joke, abused me for entertainment, and tried to break me because it made you feel powerful. But you failed, Rami. I'm not broken. I'm free." Rami's mask crumbled completely. "You think that mafia boss you're with is any better than me? You think he actually cares about you? He's using you just like I did. Once he gets what he needs, he'll discard you like trash." "Actually," a voice said from behind Rami, "I'm in love with her." Luca appeared, moving to stand beside Rosa with casual confidence. "Which is something you never were, despite your lies about love. You wanted property. I want a partner. There's a significant difference." Rami stood abruptly, chair scraping against cobblestones. You destroyed everything. You took my wife, ruined my career, destroyed—" "I didn't take anything that wasn't freely given," Luca interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "Rosa chose to leave you. She chose to testify against your employers. She chose to build a new life. You lost her the moment you raised your hand to her the first time. Everything else was just delayed consequence." He stepped closer, and Rosa saw why people feared Luca Romano. "Now you have two choices. Leave Sicily immediately, accept that Rosa is gone forever, and rebuild your life somewhere far away from here. Or continue making threats, continue trying to contact her and discover exactly why people across 3 continents fear my name." The threat hung in the Mediterranean air. Rami looked between them, Rosa sitting calmly, Luca standing protectively, Marco and the other associates watching from nearby tables. He was outnumbered, outmatched, and finally understanding that he'd lost completely. "This isn't over," he said, but the words lacked conviction. "Yes," Rosa said firmly, "it is. Goodbye, Rami. I hope you find therapy, personal growth, and genuine remorse for what you did. But even if you don't, I'm done carrying the weight of your cruelty. I'm free now. And you can't take that from me." Rami left without another word. Marco followed him to ensure he actually departed Palermo, got on a flight back to Lebanon, and never returned. Rosa watched him disappear into the crowd and felt the last chains of their marriage dissolve. "You okay?" Luca asked gently. "Better than okay," Rosa said, and meant it. I looked him in the eye and didn't feel fear, just pity. He's going to spend his life blaming everyone else for his failures. I'm going to spend mine actually living. The next 3 months transformed Rosa's life in ways she'd never imagined possible. Antonella, impressed by Rosa's courage and intelligence, began training her in family business operations, the legitimate side that Antonio managed. Rosa discovered she had a talent for financial analysis and project management, skills that had gone unrecognized during years of domestic work, but had actually been developing with every household budget she'd managed invisibly. By July 2023, Rosa was working as Antonio's assistant manager for the family's hotel properties, earning a legitimate salary, building a career rather than merely surviving. Her relationship with Luca developed with careful slowness, both of them aware that Rosa needed time to heal, to establish her independence, to be certain that any feelings weren't just gratitude mixed with trauma bonding. They spent months as friends first, talking for hours about everything and nothing, building trust that had nothing to do with protection or debt. The first time Luca kissed her, August 12, 2023, on the villa's terrace where they'd first talked until sunrise. Rosa kissed him back freely, choosing him because she wanted him, not because she needed him. "I love you," Luca told her that night, "but I need you to know something. You don't owe me anything. You can leave anytime you want. You can build whatever life makes you happy, even if that life doesn't include me. Your freedom is more important than my feelings." Rosa had cried then, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief that someone finally understood what she needed most. "I love you too," she told him, "and I choose to stay. Not because I need protection, but because I want a future with you. There's a difference, and you taught me to recognize it." In September 2023, Rosa flew to the EBM Philippines for the first time in 6 years, not as a returning OFW with nothing to show for her sacrifice, but as Elena Martinelli, successful hotel manager, accompanied by her boyfriend, whose family had funded her mother's complete medical treatment. Remedios wept when she saw her daughter, hardly recognizing the confident woman who'd replaced the exhausted girl who'd left for Dubai. The reunion was bittersweet. Rosa couldn't tell her family everything about how she'd escaped or who'd helped her, but she could show them that she'd survived, that she'd found happiness, that their sacrifice hadn't been wasted. Luca met Rosa's entire extended family with genuine respect. Speaking broken Tagalog he'd learned phonetically to make them comfortable, sitting on plastic chairs in their modest home without a trace of the privilege he'd been born into. Eduardo Castillo, recovered from his stroke but still weak, took Luca's hand and said in halting English, "You protect my daughter. You make her smile. I see she love you. You good man." That blessing, from a father who'd spent years feeling guilty for his daughter's sacrifice, meant more to Luca than any business deal or family approval. On October 23, 2023, exactly 7 months after Rosa had boarded Emirates flight EK-119 with 15,000 dirhams in terror in her heart, Antonella Romano made an announcement at family dinner. "Elena," she said, using Rosa's chosen name with respect, "you've proven yourself worthy of this family not through blood, but through strength, intelligence, and courage. You've contributed to our business success, earned the respect of everyone who works with you, and made my son happier than I've ever seen him." She paused, and Rosa saw genuine affection in the matriarch's eyes. "I'm giving you 10% ownership in our hotel properties, not as a gift, not as charity, but as recognition of your value to this family. You've earned this through your work. You're one of us now." Rosa couldn't speak past the emotion choking her throat. In 7 months, she'd gone from property to partner, from invisible domestic worker to valued family member, from victim to survivor, to someone building a future on her own terms. The proposal came on December 15, 2023, in the library where Rosa spent evenings reading Italian literature and improving her language skills. Luca found her there after dinner, holding a small box that made her heart race. "Before you panic," he said with a slight smile, "I need you to understand what I'm offering and what I'm not." He sat beside her, opened the box to reveal a ring, beautiful but not ostentatious, elegant without being controlling. "This ring represents my promise to love you, respect you, and support your dreams for the rest of my life. It represents partnership, not possession. If you say yes, you're not becoming my property. You're choosing to build a life together as equals." He paused, dark eyes serious. "But if you say no, or if you need more time, nothing changes. You're still family. You still have your job, your place here, your freedom. Rosa, I will never use my love as a cage. What do you say?" Rosa took the ring, studied it in the library's soft light, and remembered every moment of the journey that had brought her here, from rice fields in Tarlac to servant quarters in Dubai, to this Sicilian villa where she'd finally found home. "Yes," she said clearly, "I choose you. I choose us. I choose this future we're building together." The wedding was small, intimate, attended by both families despite the cultural and geographical distance between them. Rosa wore traditional Filipiniana ternos for the ceremony, Luca wore a barong Tagalog that Remedios had made specially for him, and Antonella cried genuine tears seeing her son marry a woman who'd proven herself worthy through survival rather than pedigree. Today, in 2025, Rosa, now permanently Elena Romano, manages 5 hotels across Sicily and Malta, has brought her entire family to Italy where they live in security and comfort, and speaks at international conferences about domestic worker rights and abuse prevention. She and Luca split their time between Sicily and the Philippines, where they have opened a foundation providing resources for OFWs escaping abusive situations. The foundation has helped 147 workers escape dangerous situations, provided legal support for 83 more, and changed labor laws in 3 countries. Rami Khoury last appeared in public records in 2024, working as a sales clerk in a Beirut electronics store, his dreams of climbing Dubai's social ladder destroyed by his own cruelty. Sheikh Ibrahim al-Zahrani is serving 15 years in UAE prison for fraud and money laundering. The Al-Zahrani Empire was dissolved, with assets redistributed to workers they'd exploited. Sometimes Rosa thinks about the woman she was at 2:34 a.m. on that March morning when she stole her passport back and chose freedom over security. She thinks about the terror, the desperation, the absolute certainty that she'd rather die trying to escape than spend one more day in Rami's cage. And then she looks at the life she's built, the career, the family, the love that grew from honesty rather than manipulation. She looks at Luca, who proved that protection doesn't require possession, that strength can be gentle, that dangerous men and good men aren't mutually exclusive categories. "Do you ever regret it?" Luca asked her recently, sitting on their terrace watching the Mediterranean sunset. "Trusting me on that plane, coming to Sicily, everything that followed?" Rosa smiled, took his hand, and remembered the moment that changed everything, when a desperate woman sat next to a dangerous man and discovered that sometimes the most unlikely people become your salvation. "Not for a single second," she said. "You gave me back my life, and then you let me decide what to do with it. That's not something I could ever regret." This is the story of Rosa Castillo, who escaped a golden cage and found her wings, and of Luca Romano, who learned that the greatest power isn't controlling people, it's helping them discover their own strength. Sometimes the person sitting next to you on a plane isn't just a stranger. Sometimes they're the beginning of the rest of your life. Thank you for following Rosa's journey from victim to survivor to someone who helps others escape the cages she broke free from. If this story moved you, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, you are never too broken to rebuild. You are never too trapped to escape, and you deserve love that frees you, not love that controls you. Drop a comment telling us what moment in Rosa's story resonated most with you. And check next week's upload for another true crime story that proves even in darkness, hope survives.